Hello, my name is Duncan and welcome to Back Away from the Donkey or BAFTA Books. Welcome also to Micah, the Labrador, who's just down by my side here. Hello, grunting away. And Gizmo's asleep over there. And the banging you hear is her tail hitting the back of my chair. I noticed last week that Shaun Standfasts did a video of his top 10 favourite science fiction book series. And then that was followed up by Steve Donaghue doing one of 10 recommendations. I don't really do sort of top 10 favourite lists or top 5 favourite lists because they change within 5 minutes of I've done them because my moods change and what I think is better than that. So I find them a little bit pointless for me. But I thought I could do a recommendations of 10 science fiction book series that I think are worth your time. Some little more obscure ones, some ones that other people haven't selected. So I have made that list. Got a few notes in front of me just because you're forgetting. I tried to get the books out for every version, but in the end I sort of lost the will to live because I had so many books in front of me. So some of them I've got, some of them I haven't. So I thought we would start with M. John Harrison's Requiem. Now, M. John Harrison is a great writer. He's, in some ways, he's in the vein of people like Gene Wolfe and people like this. Requiem was written between 74 and 84, I think, off the top of my head. And it was a selection of short stories, a few novels. And I said it's all collected in this, even though it says Fantasy Masterworks, it is, well, I would count it as science fiction. It's science fiction with a fantasy bent in the same way sort of Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun is. And it does have a lot of sort of, not similarities, a lot of the same feel to it. And it was inspired by Jack Vance's incredible Dying Earth books. And it's basically a city. It's basically a history of a city that exists in the future after technology has gone down. So you get all the detritus of old technology around. And the city exists through the stories in different forms. There's different versions of the city. The first main story is the Pastel City, which you have a poet basically trying to defend the city from brain-eating technology, which sounds very pulpy, but it's a lot more than that because M. John Harrison's got some beautiful prose, writes stunningly, very poetically, and it's one of these books I think really needs to be read. So that is Requiem by M. John Harrison. Okay, my next choice is some book from Charles Stross. Charles Stross, a British author. So it's something more modern than some of the stuff I do pick. And this is the Merchant Prince's one. This is another one that borders on fantasy-ish, but it is really science fiction. It's a parallel world, alternate reality set of books. I have the first 3 books here in front of me, and I have the first one, Family Trade, with that horrible cover, and then a slightly better Hidden Family, and the Clan Corporate with a slightly better covers. There are 6 books initially. And then there's another 3 books which are 17 in the future. And basically the story starts off, we follow Miriam, I can't remember what's her surname, Beckstein. Yep. Miriam Beckstein, who basically discovers who was an orphan. Basically discovers that well, actually, she wasn't an orphan, she was well, she was, yeah, because she was adopted by but then she finds out that her family are from another alternate timeline, not alternate timeline, alternate universe. And basically this alternate thing, there's like big clan, what they call clans, which are almost like mafia-esque sort of organizations that deal with the parallel universe of our Earth, and they use it as a way to trade. It was a bit of a funny book. When I first read it, there's a lot of stuff about trade and about, yeah, I suppose trade, and not a lot of action. And I wasn't enjoying it for the first half of the book. Then I got about 2/3 of the way through and it just sort of clicked. because stuff started to happen, it all sort of pulled together, which is one of my reasons I always say I don't DNF books, because I know people who probably would have given up after about 100 pages, but it's well worth it, because once you get into it and follow the character, she's not the most likable of characters and does some stupid things. You think, but it's well written, the universe is well created, his world building is good, and he writes well, and they're well worth a look at. I said The Merchant Princes by Charles Stross. Okay, next we get on to the main man, Philip Jose Farmer. This is Dayworld. I think Shaun suggested Riverworld. Riverworld's one of my favourite series ever, because I really, really do love it. This was Dayworld. This came out 1981-82. I bought it when it came out. Show my age. And the sequels are, I have a copy of Dayworld Rebel in this horrible trade paperback. I have a hatred of trade paperbacks. If you look past a video a few things back, I tell you why. But yeah, I don't like them. And then I have the final book, Dayworld Breakup. A nice little hardback version. So I have them all 3 different sizes, which is a bit annoying, but anyhow. But Dayworld is in a future that, excuse me while I move that, a future many, many thousands of years in the future. And what happened was overpopulation got so much that they basically freeze people for 1 day. So people live 1 day a week. And so 1 day out of 7 you're awake, and the other 6 days you sleep, so people share apartments and what have you. They call it being stoned. And Jefferson Caird, who's the main guy, he's what is known as an organic, which is a policeman, but also he's a daybreaker. He lives every day. He has a different personality every day. And this is where the story gets quite interesting, because his personalities are almost like a multiple personality disorder. He really totally inhabits this new personality every day that he does this. And it follows him as this mad, basically priest almost uncovers a lot of this, because also, as well as being a daybreaker, Jefferson is also a member of a family group that have developed a way to enhance and live longer. And all this unfolds all through this novel. So you get to the, I don't want to give you any more because I don't want to give any away the plot, but that's how it sort of unfolds. And Philip Jose Farmer is world building is second to none, and the way he brings him, and then he just goes off on tangents as he always does. But yes, the Dayworld books, well worth it, and if you get them with the lovely Chris Foss covers, get them. Which I think the first one actually is, yeah, the first one, that's a Tim White cover, and that's Chris Foss, and the hardback is Chris Foss, obviously because it's yellow. But yes, the Dayworld books, well worth having. And I'm just going to shuffle some books around before we go on to the next one, because I said I've got so many bloody books out for this, it got a bit out of hand. Okay, my next one is the Crystal Singer Trilogy. That's the first book there, the Crystal Singer. I know Steve Donaghue recommended the Dragon books. The Dragon books are excellent, but these are some science fiction ones, and these are about people who use special cutters that can only be tuned by people with perfect pitch, and they cut these crystals, and these crystals are used for communication and many things. But the planet that they are mined upon is a very dangerous planet, and you have to like adapt to the planet. So once you become one, you know. So we follow Kilashandra Ree, who is a music student who basically is turned down for a job, and she ends up joining the guild, the Heptite Guild, who control all the mining of the crystals, and it follows her journey through this. So we have this book, the first one, which is probably the best one, followed by the book Kilashandra, and then Crystal Line. What's interesting is this first story was first written in the Continuum books, Continuum 1. I'm trying to collect these because there's about 4 of them, and each one has an episode of that book in it. It's got basically, there's 4 or 5 stories, some G-Morph in there and what have you, and the stories run between each one like a magazine. And that's got the original of the Crystal Singer in there, and the ending of this is slightly different to the one in this original book here, and I'm just quite intrigued to get it. But that's a bit of random facts for you. But yes, the Crystal Singer books, well worth a read. It's still quite hard science fiction, but yeah, there's a bit of romance in there. They're not lots of fighting and stuff, but I really thoroughly enjoyed them. Crystal Singer books. Okay, my next one's Brian Daley's Requiem for a Ruler of Worlds. This is the first of the, I'm trying to think the names, Hobart Floyd and Electricity Fitzhugh books. There's 3 books, Jinx on Terran Inheritance and Fall of the White Starship is the other 2 books. These are basically like quest books. You have one guy who wins a lottery and gets an inheritance, and he has to go literally on a quest, and so this other guy goes with him, and they're just a bunch of fun quests. Brian Daley, if you didn't know, he wrote the radio series, the radio adaptation of Star Wars. He actually wrote the script in that, which is excellent. If you ever get a chance to read it all, because I've got the scripts, or listen to it, it is excellent. He also did a novelisation of Tron. He wrote quite a lot of his own stuff, and I said, Requiem for the Ruler of Worlds. You won't find many people. This is out of print technically. You can find some secondhand, which is quite difficult, but I did have a look, and I have seen it on Kindle for quite a reasonable price. So if you're interested in those are there. And a nice bark from little Gizmo, who has just seen a man walk past our window. Okay, the next books are, I don't have them with me because they're in a box somewhere, and I'm fed up with getting all the books out. The Tripods Trilogy by John Christopher. I suppose today they would be counted as YA, but YA in the UK as a terminology only sort of appeared about 2000, and to me it's a bit of a pseudo genre because it doesn't really represent any, and when people think YA they think sparkly vampires and things like this. It's more in line, I would have thought, to the Highland juveniles of things like Starman Jones than anything else, but they're really, really good reads. John Christopher wrote The Death of Grass, which is a great post-apocalyptic novel about a biological thing that destroys all crops. And it was made into a film called No Blade of Grass. I think the book was released as No Blade of Grass in America, and it's a really, really grim film. If you get to see it, it's well worth watching. But the Tripods Trilogy, he admitted himself he was inspired by War of the Worlds, but it's gone off on its own. It's a really quite interesting concept, that the fact that the Earth's been invaded by aliens, and these tripods, they're overlords there, and what they do is they cap teenagers. When people come of age to about 16, they put these metal caps in the top of their heads, which help control them, helps any sort of, not total free thought, but helps them want to rebel against them. So the book, in, you know, quite a bit of a cliche, is you follow 3 guys who manage to avoid the cap, and they're traveling to some rebel wings, but it's just done very well. John Christopher writes well. There was a BBC TV series of it in the early 80s, which I own, which was pretty well done. They didn't do the final book in it, so it sort of stopped partway through. So the first book is called The White Mountains, then you get The City of Lead and Gold, and then you get the Pool, yes, the Pool or something, I can't remember off the top of my head. But yes, so if you want sort of an easyish read, but very entertaining and well written and some really interesting ideas, definitely the Tripods Trilogy. Next on my list is, I always come back to, I may have mentioned this before, Helixia Trilogy by Brian Aldiss, wonderful Brian Aldiss. Helixia Spring, Summer and Winter. And this is like a planetary romance, and it follows life on a planet. And this planet, let me get this right, it and 3 other planets revolve around a star, and in its own elliptical orbit, they revolve around another star. And because of this, the seasons are like centuries and centuries long. So it's sort of tale of survival about different races upon the planet. And it is just such big scope. If you look into the background of it and the work Brian Aldiss did trying to get the biology and the astrophysics and that all right, so to work out whether this would actually work, It's quite incredible, and I do not think it gets enough praise, and more people should read it. I said these are the covers from when I originally brought it, which I absolutely love. There is a version in Masterworks just called Helixia, which is all 3 books put together. So if you wanted to just buy the lot, you can buy them like that. Number 9, another book that's buried in a box somewhere. It's by Mary Gentle, and it's Golden Witch Breed, and there are 2 books in this thing. The second one, what's it called? Ancient Light, yes. And this is almost a planetary romance as well, but you get more characterization probably than you do in the Helixia books. But it is a story of Christy, she is an envoy from Earth to go to this planet, Orth. And Orth is an interesting planet because they're almost like post-technology. Many centuries ago, they had this race called the Witch Breed, who had this technology and basically enslaved the whole planet. So they are very cautious on technology. So there's lots of traditions. They limit what they can have, and they're limiting the contact. And she is there to try and, obviously, as an envoy, to try and get more contact with the planet and try and work out, get deals with them and things like this. So she's got to deal with all the locals through religious leaders, and there's some conflict going on there as well. It's not if you're expecting big action from the start, it's not going to happen. It's quite a slow builder and of stuff around the sociology and that all sort of slowly unwraps. Both really good books, well worth a read. I don't think another books I don't hear mentioned very often. So that's the Golden Witch Breed and Ancient Light by Mary Gentle. My final book is one of my favourite authors because it's Harry Harrison. One of his serious books, everybody knows, the Stainless Steel Rat books, which if you haven't, you should read. This is To the Stars, and these books, so I've not got them here because they're somewhere else. They were released in the early 80s, 81-ish, I think the first one was, and it's Homeworld, World, Star World. So I get them all, sometimes get them in the wrong order. And you're basically following, it's more of a dystopian thing. You're following this engineer called Jan Kuzlosnik. I think I pronounced his name right. And he's like in this upper class in London, and he's into microprocessors and stuff like that. And in this world, basically everything's screwed down, and there's rumours of wars that kill people and what have you. And I said it's a big dystopian thing, and it's as he slowly gets involved in not a rebellion, I suppose it is a rebellion, and discovers things. I don't want to give away too much. Some of the technology, because he's among processors, is quite funny because he goes on about a 4K bubble memory, which is, I assume, the equivalent of a USB stick, and 4K isn't a lot, but when it was written, it was. That's what I always say. In that world, that is good. But but it's him as he gets slowly involved in this fight back against the people trying to fight back against the systems, and how that happens and how that goes wrong. I don't want to tell you what's in the second and third books because that would almost give away some of the first book. But if you like a good sort of dystopian man fighting against the man, I suppose, it's interesting. But it's not fighting in your normal ways. More subterfuge and things like that. And Harry Harrison, no matter where he is, always well worth reading. So yes, that's 10 books that I said I would highly recommend, 10 sort of series that I think are well worth anybody's time, and you might want to explore them. And if you do, that's great. I'm going to leave you for the moment. I'm going to record another video in a second actually, but hopefully that's okay. And I will see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.